Hey everybody, it's the week of the 11th. I'm Tomas.
I'm Thomas.
And this is TechBus. Hey everybody, and welcome back. We took a week off for the 4th. Knew you guys would be enjoying yourselves, so we enjoyed ourselves as well. Before we get into our topics and some of our runner-ups, Thomas, how was your 4th, man?
That was pretty good. Nothing. My kids were excited with the fireworks and just a relaxing weekend.
Awesome. I didn't do too much either. I'm a big kid, but fireworks show looks expensive.
So how much did you spend on fireworks?
No, not this year, man. Well, actually, my sister, I usually buy fireworks for her kids, but they went to some place called Honey Creek in Iowa, so it's some nice lakes and stuff. But I mostly work, so. When we come back, we're going to get into some runner-up topics, and this week my topic is going to be 7 tech advancements from the 70s that changed the world, and kind of go into how they've changed since then. What about you, Thomas?
I'm going to be talking about how to properly dispose of an email server if you don't want anyone to read your old emails.
Awesome. We'll be back here in a little bit. Thanks for watching and tuning in. Hey everybody, welcome back. Episode 4. We're really excited. Took a break off for the 4th, but we're back now. Make sure to leave us some comments to let us know how we're doing and let us know what you'd like to hear. We'll be adding some guests soon. Before we get into each of our topics, this week's runner-up, I have 3 that are pretty interesting reads. First one, Fortune.com, how new technology can create new legal problems. So as you know, technology, they're trying to find a way to bring it in. This was just regarding a Japanese technology company that unveiled a robot called Sophie, and it had analytics and calculations that can conduct interviews and recognize facial expressions to tell when people were lying. And where they ran into a problem was it ended up being somewhat, as instead of an interview for a job, it ended up being like a lie detector test, which caused some problems. So that's something you guys should read about. It's pretty interesting.
That's kind of interesting. So actually this morning I had a discussion with a company that does data analytics. And they're talking about how they have, in the legal space, like a lot of legal work is just like looking up case laws, like
right.
Just like some clerk like churning through all this data to figure out like if this goes to court, like what's our chances of winning.
Right.
And he's saying with the new AI stuff that's coming out, that's like a lot of law firms are kind of scared of. It actually will just go in and churn through all that data and like figure out like if somebody's guilty or not. Like basically what are their chances of winning in court.
Really?
So like it's basically machine learning for case law. And there'll be like ethical questions around that too. Like,
that's interesting. I'll have to look into that. The next thing, it kind of ties into something I mentioned a week or so ago. The next wearable technology could be your skin. So electronic tattoos, nerve replacements, and e-skin. And instead of getting into really the impact on like business, I found that it was interesting that one of the main components of that was typical e-skin consists of matrix of different electronic components, flexible transmitters, LEDs, and they can look into these as assisting people in research regarding nervous system diseases. So the technology can be used in Silicon Valley for other things, but they're using it to place it on people to do studies about some of our more nervous system diseases that we aren't super advanced at, like Parkinson's and all that stuff. So that could be a new wave. I know there's a lot of people who are affected by that. So if you go to newsstatesman.com, that's another interesting article. And then finally,
we'll start hooking the links up in the show notes so you guys can go there.
Absolutely. And the final is triplepundit.com, 5 ways your small businesses can save on technology costs. And this is great for small businesses. I'll just list them off. You can read the article. It's really cool. Go green in the office. Of course, get rid of paper, stuff like that. Leverage cloud technology, which I'm going to touch on in my segment. cutting traveling costs. So, you know, business over Skype, business over WebEx, telecommuting, and then educate your employees. So basically, effective use of technology instead of using a whole bunch of clunky stuff. Just get on the right thing that can do multiple. And so when you guys get a chance to check that out, that's on triplepundit.com. When we get back, I'll get into my segment, which is 7 tech advancements from the 70s that changed the world. All right, guys, let's dive into this. PaceMagazine.com posted 7 tech advancements from the 70s that changed the world. Let's remind them after this. What are you talking about, Tom?
I'm talking about how to properly dispose of an email server. And I mean, this isn't really going to get into a political talk, but just in the light of the news of everything with the email scandal, I wanted to talk about some of the technology behind what's going on with that. And this doesn't necessarily have to do just with email servers, but any type of files that you don't want anyone else to see, how to get that off your computer. Because just because you delete your file on your computer doesn't mean it's gone.
Oh,
So,
okay. Well, I definitely need to hear about this. I think all husbands need to hear about this as well. But I'm just playing. But anyways, so this article's interesting. The 70s was the decade technology really became consumer technology. And so it just goes over certain things. And the reason why I wanted to just have some fun with this segment, and the reason why I wanted to bring it up as well is to see from that technology to today and get your ideas on what's replaced it and what's next. So the first one is the floppy disk. Just read you a floppy disk. It's obsolete technology, but at the time, it was a huge thing. You saw Apple had released its own floppies that boasted 256 KB of data storage in 1978. Then it was followed by 360. And then in the 80s, you were introduced to 3.5 floppy disk that we all know and love. So that was revolutionary at the time. And I remember, it's funny, I was in college in 2001. Yeah, I'm old, guys. But I still had the floppy disk. And I remember going to college at UNO and Bellevue and being like, what the hell, where does this thing go? And everybody had already moved on to the USB. Like, that's so crazy how I never would have thought I would have been behind. But USB is now being replaced by cloud, right? Is that correct?
well, it just depends on where you want to store it. I mean, I still use thumb drives and stuff like that,
But that's the next wave, right?
It's
Not
offsite
having any type of physical component to say.
I still like to back my stuff up because let's face it, there's no such thing as a cloud. It's just somebody else's computer. So, I'm sure they have backup systems and all that stuff, and it's probably more secure than just having it on your hard drive. But maybe I'm paranoid. I don't trust it. So I do triple backups of all my files. I don't want to lose like family photos and stuff. I do one on my regular computer that I use, and then I have a 1 terabyte SSD. I back all that up and I have that in a fireproof safe, and then I have a third backup in the cloud. So
that's crazy. Is the cloud, from what I remember, isn't there some security issues with the cloud?
with like your photos getting.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you always hear about that stuff, like the celebrity stuff getting hacked and everything. I don't have anything in there that I care. Like,
Right.
Don't put stuff on there that you don't want people to see, I guess. But
For sure.
yeah, there's always security issues. But a lot of times people don't care. Like, I don't know if you had enough computers over time. You're like, what happened to that file? Was it on this computer or this phone? Or
Right.
and after a while, so I don't know. I usually do like every 6 months or so, like back up everything on my phone and my computers onto my remote, SSD that I have in a safe, and then put it into the cloud. So I think it's multiple redundancies if you want to really back up your data. It's up to you though.
Is there anything else that you've heard that's the next wave or anything like that?
Not much. I mean, I think it's just the popularity of all these like share drives like Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive. Everybody's, even Office 365 is moving toward that, where basically everything is in the cloud. We're trying to move that direction. So, yeah, I think that's the future, probably.
Awesome. The next one is the portable cassette player. Now,
I have one of those.
you had a Walkman, right?
Yeah.
Come on, we all had a Walkman.
I had the floppy disk too, but actually, I remember like in the mid 90s, they had the hard floppy disks.
Right, that's the one I used. Yeah.
And I actually, back then, I was kind of ahead of the curve. They had the read-write CDs. Nobody like knew about them back then, but I think it was like 500 megs you could put on a CD back then.
That's the RW?
The RW.
Yeah,
like
I
when
remember.
it first came out.
I remember buying those to burn CDs and then figuring out that that's not how they worked.
Yeah, but it was like I think the hard disks were like 2 megabytes when I was using it. And this was like, I remember it was like 200 or 100 times what was on the thing, so.
I never understood those, because did you only have the ability to write once on that CD, or how would it configure to continuously write more on it?
Well, we'll save that for the next topic, because we're going to talk about memory and how things are stored on disk.
Oh, nice. Okay, so.
But the Walkman, also, my cousin had a cool one from Home Alone, where it had the little thing and you could talk into it and then change the...
Oh, I guess I was.
You never saw Home Alone?
I mean, I saw Home Alone. I can't remember.
Remember he talks in the thing and he makes himself sound like the guy. He changes it to like a deep pitched voice.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
But anyway, so we go from the Walkman to the CD player to the portable CD player to now the
MP3.
iPod.
Yeah.
Well, the MP3 and then the iPod. And then Lord knows what's next, but yeah, isn't that crazy how...
Well, I don't think people are not even going to own the media. It's just going to all be streaming content. So
yeah, that's where it's
now
going.
we moved away from even having MP3s where it's just, streaming.
And your phone. You don't buy a separate device now for your music. It's you have your phone, which has, your iTunes, which has your 1,000 CDs on it.
So how do you listen to music? You have iTunes?
I have iTunes on my phone, I don't really stream because I have to admit that I still play CDs, but that's just because I'm old.
You don't have the floppy disk anymore?
I don't have a floppy disk.
So not much has changed since 2001.
Not much has changed, and that's sad, the sad part. But it's crazy because remember, even before the cassette player was the record player,
Yeah.
and
But actually, correct me if I'm wrong, you know more about music than I do, but I think even with modern stereo equipment, you can't get as crisp of a sound as you get off of a record.
Absolutely. Every form has diminished the original sound. I mean, even the way they record music. So we're working on Big Wade's album. Big Wade happens to be the artist who created our theme music for our thing. But so we're working on his album, and one of the big things is even the way they record music. Like now, when you hear music, it's all syncopated. And before, the reason you got such beautiful music from like Doris or Marvin Gaye, or it is because nothing was synchronized. It was a live recording, and as dirty and offset as it was, that's what made the music beautiful. But it's going back to the cassette player. It's funny remember how if you jammed up your cassette, or you broke your CD or scratched it, now at least...
You have to go get a pencil and rewind.
Right. Now at least, when you buy your thing digital, it's pretty much secure. So I think that advancement is pretty cool. So 3 is the all-in-one personal computer. So
like
the original Apple I, which was birthed in Steve Wozniak's garage. And I've never messed with one of these. Have you seen one of these, or have you messed with them?
No. My interesting thing was my grandfather worked for IBM.
Oh, okay.
So we, as kids, were kind of exposed to computers and the internet, like probably before a lot of people. Because I remember when I was a little kid, we'd go downstairs and my grandpa had like 5 computers and stuff down there. And if you drive down the house, he's got like this like 200-foot ham radio thing sticking off of his house, and he was just into that stuff. And I remember when we were a kid, he was telling us all about the information superhighway, and everyone was like, "What is this guy talking about?"
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
pretty
he was like one of the first adopters, like the dial-up connections to like dial up into like universities and stuff like that. So,
really. Did you guys used to play games on those green screens? Like we used to play all those games, like the Oregon Trail and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
he had like stuff that was like nobody like you hadn't heard. Like he had like color video games and stuff back before
Wow.
anybody did. So this was when I was a really little kid. I just remember that stuff. But
I wonder, did anybody keep any of that stuff? Or do you think is there a value to having that? Or is
I
it
think some of it, like if you had one of those original Apple computers, I think they're worth a lot of money. It just depends on the first edition of something, probably. But yeah, I don't know. All right, what's the next one?
the brick cell phone. So the original cell phone, the Motorola Dynatac 8000X, first hit the U.S. market in 1983. By today's standards, the Dynatac was an enormous beast, and it cost. Guess how much it cost? Just guess.
$1,000.
No, keep going.
10,000.
Less. So roughly it'd be $10,000 today, but when it came out, it was $3,995.
I remember
It took 10 hours to charge and offered users just 30 minutes of call time.
Oh.
So, but isn't that funny how
what year was that?
1983. So here's the thing that's funny is phones went from the bricks, and then remember, was it like the early 2000s that it was like the microchip phone? Like that was the coolest thing to have the tiniest phone. And then now look at these phones, man, they're like bricks, man. Like, isn't that funny how we went kind of in a circle?
Full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was even thinking with the music stuff. Like I remember in the mid '90s, like downloading MP3s from FTP servers and Napster and all that stuff was like all illegal. And now it's like it's like the standard, like Spotify and
they changed.
Yeah,
they changed how everything was.
Got full circle.
Yeah. So, and the final one, and the most nostalgic one that I love the most, was the VCR. So, the VCR, in the early 80s, the movie industry led by Motion Picture Association of America challenged the sale of VCR in court. During the case, the VCR was likened to the Boston Strangler and how brutality it would kill the movie industry. So, it's crazy that it was received as the death of the movie theater, but really the best times of my youth were spent at Blockbusters, man, on Friday night.
Well, here's the thing that'll blow your mind. My kids, when we take a place like we went to a hotel and they're watching TV, they don't understand that you can't like pick whatever show you want or you can't pause it.
Oh, okay.
Like they don't get it because like that's all we have. We don't have cable. We don't have TV at all. We just have Netflix, Amazon Prime, and they go and pick the show they want to watch. And if they don't want to watch it, they fast forward it. They have no concept of like TV shows on at this time, and there's one channel or whatever. So it's a totally different world.
And I guess the VCR kind of started that,
Yeah.
you know, putting in your video and fast forwarding it or rewinding it. But I think that was probably the best part of my youth, was going to Blockbusters on Friday night. And the funniest thing I see now is those memes that say like, oh no, I forgot to return my video from Blockbusters. Now I have to take out a second mortgage on my house because those late fees really killed you. But those, from the VCR to the DVD to the Blu-ray to now these DirecTV, is some of these movies come out the same day. So it's almost like we're getting rid of all that stuff. So.
All right, let's wrap this segment up, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about securing your files. So stay tuned. All right, everybody, welcome back to TechBus, Technology and Business Meet. In our final segment here, we're going to talk about security with files when you delete them. And just in light of the whole email scandal, I don't know if you saw the FBI briefing of what happened. Most people are probably listening to politics. I was listening to that, but also to some of the technical stuff he was talking about. I thought it was pretty cool how they recovered some of the information from the swap location on the server. So I was going to kind of deep dive into that a little bit and talk about how to secure your files, what it means to delete a file, and then also kind of some of the technology behind what happened in that incident. So
Awesome.
I was going to pull up a couple slides here, just kind of high level. This, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on this. It's just going to be very high level, kind of superficial information. So basically on a computer, everything is just ones and zeros on disk somewhere. It's a little blip on side of a piece of metal or some kind of rotating disk on the older stuff. New stuff is solid state. But basically you have, this is kind of a visualization where you have like little bits of data, like say this sector here is a 1, this is a 0, 1, 0, whatever. And these make up your files. So again, this is very oversimplified, but it's just more for explanation. So if you can picture like your disk drive here, and here these pink dots kind of represent files that are saved. So when you start up Windows or Mac or something, it knows that the homework you're working on, the Excel file you're working on is located in this spot, and the Word document that you're writing up is located here, and then the pictures of your family vacation are over here. It basically keeps track of where all that stuff is.
Okay.
So when you go into your computer and say, hey, I want to look at the picture of last year when I went to the beach, the computer spins up and says, okay, I got to grab the data from these two locations here, right? So what happens when you delete a file, so say, oh man, I don't really like that picture that I took at the beach, or I really don't want anyone to read that email that I wrote, so I'm going to delete that one, right? So what you're doing is you're telling the computer, go ahead, delete that file. It doesn't actually erase what's there. It just kind of forgets where it's located, and then it marks that and says, okay, next time they want to save a file, these two spots are now available to write over, but it doesn't actually write over them until it needs to. So say I delete this email or this file, and then it's no longer accessible to me through my computer, so this location here is now, available to get written over. 2 or 3 months may pass, and I save a bunch of files, but they get saved over at this section or that section up there. Maybe part of this section gets overwritten into here, but there's still a partial data in my file. So what happened is when they turned in that email server, they said they turned in everything they were supposed to, but they actually were able to go into the disk that was all fragmented and kind of find bits and pieces of emails that were deleted from the system, but they were still never written over by the computer system. And they talked a lot on the briefing about different fragments. So like they found fragments of emails, and what that means is like, okay, so here's emails stored in these two sectors, and one of them got written over, but they were able to recover that second half. So they actually went through very thoroughly and like scraped all the data off those drives. And I actually have a friend who does that for a hobby. He goes to people's, I shouldn't say this, but he goes to like garage sales and buys people's little computers, and then he rips all the, files off their drive that they thought weren't there anymore, but they are.
That's crazy.
So the point of the story is, just because you delete a file off your computer or your phone does not mean that it's gone. So
Including your segment, are you going to tell us how?
yeah, so how do you get rid of it? Okay. So basically what it can do, there's programs out there that'll just go through and just set every single bit on this whole thing, this whole drive back to like 1. So just 1, like wipe the whole drive clean. So that's the only way to kind of ensure that, and at that point there's no way to recover it. There's a free utility out there that I've used in the past. Whenever I decommission a computer, I always run it through this DBAN program, and it'll just turn back every single sector on that drive back to 1 or 0.
Really?
And there's no way to get that data. Now you'll hear some talk around this stuff, around like DoD type of sanitation guidelines. They have this standard called 52202M. This really is kind of irrelevant at this point. It's kind of more a marketing thing by companies, but basically what it is like the DoD standard is it goes over the drive like 3 times and it sets everything back to 1 3 times. That used to be important back, I was talking the floppy disk comment before, that used to be somewhat important because on a floppy disk or some of the older drives, even though you mark the location as going back to a certain data point, there was still like some physical evidence where they could still kind of retrace like the underlying information that was there. So they would go over it 3 times. But they were saying with a lot of modern hard drives, that's not really necessary. You just go over the drive and wipe it clean 1 time. So
was that then because whatever technology that was wiping out wasn't really reading the old technology they had written it in the first place?
Yeah, kind of think of it like say we had a whiteboard here and I wrote a bunch of numbers on it, 1 2 3 4 5, and then on some of the older systems, like you could go and erase it, but they could still go back and kind of see like the etching in it that was still kind of there. But on some of the new modern stuff like solid state drives, and they're saying that's not as important. Like once you wipe it over, once you do like a single wipe over the drive, it's fine. I've run the DoD standard with DMAN and actually just have it go through 3 times anyway, just because if you want to. I mean, it's really you just set it and walk away and it runs.
So you don't have to really know too much to run this. And do you run in any chance of messing something up that you didn't want to mess up by using that program?
Well, usually when you're running this, it's like on an old computer that you're wanting to get rid of anyway. There is a little bit technical. You can't just put it in and start it up in Windows. You have to go into what's called a boot load up. Go into your
is that black screen?
Yeah, like when you first start your screen up and there's a black screen, you got to press a key and then you can go into this bootloader, basically tell it to load, instead of loading from the hard drive, load from a CD or a thumb drive, and then this basically boots up from the very beginning, so it's not even like really running in Windows or Mac, and then from there you can go ahead and execute it. Depending on the drive, the type of drive, it can take anywhere from 20 minutes to a couple hours, and it'll just go through there and churn through and set everything back. But at that point, everything's gone. Like Windows or the OS on your system is gone. All the files are gone. But I do recommend doing that, especially if you have like sensitive information on your hard drive, like bank information or HIPAA information or whatever, and your hard drives aren't encrypted, and then you go to resell that computer or whatever. I always run this because those files are there and you never know who can access them. So I think that was it. Yep, that's pretty much it. There's one other thing here real quick was there's a couple different types of standards that have happened over the years of how to wipe it clean, but basically it's getting all those back to 0 or all back to 1 is how you wipe it clean.
Awesome, man. Well, this is very good information for people who want to be more secure in an unsecure, free internet world. So that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that.
Cool. Yeah, well, thanks, guys. Leave some comments and feedback. We'd like to hear more. How can we make the show better?
And subscribe.
And subscribe.
Yeah,
We'll be hopefully having the site up soon, techbus.io, and we'll hopefully we're trying to get on iTunes and a couple other mediums. So stay tuned for that. We'll be giving updates. So thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.